The Galactic Senate's flagship, the Writ of Order, hovered over the blue-ringed moon of Sun Talos like a predator posing as a diplomat. Its silvery hull gleamed in artificial starlight, polished for the arrival of Earth's delegation. Inside its grand diplomatic hall, sculpted from gravity-folded quartz and steel so sterile it seemed afraid of warmth, an audience of alien elites gathered in silken robes, rustling wings, and pulsing throat sacs. They'd come to observe the humans, study them, perhaps even absorb them. They'd underestimated humanity before. They were about to do it again. A door slid open with the gentle whisper of wealth. 3 humans stepped inside. General Margaret Vale walked with a grace that felt rehearsed. White gloves, a pale gray skirt suit, fashioned somewhere between Earth's southern charm and military austerity, and a string of pearls that clinked softly with every step. She moved like a schoolteacher inspecting wayward boys, not a woman who once orchestrated the psychological collapse of an entire warlord's regime using only bedtime radio broadcasts and rumors. To her left was General Elias Kane, a silent man with iron-gray hair and pale eyes that had once overseen a civilian evacuation by convincing 3 enemy factions to accidentally kill each other. He wore no rank insignia, just a neat brown trench coat over black formal wear. He looked like a librarian, the kind who wouldn't blink if the archives burned. On the right waddled Private Amos Darnell, a round-faced man who smelled faintly of barbecue chips and nervous sweat. He wasn't supposed to be here, but someone needed to carry the diplomat bag and smile like a buffoon. Earth liked to send a clown. It calmed the sharks. Admiral Korzak of the Lardhak Empire, a being twice the height of the tallest human and draped in a shimmering crimson cape, spread his 7 fingers and dipped his horned head. "Welcome, ambassadors of Earth," he bellowed, voice like gravel and oil. "You honor us with your presence." Margaret smiled sweetly. "Why, Admiral, it's an honor just to be remembered. We're such a tiny, backwards planet. Surprised y'all didn't misplace us again." Her southern lilt curled around every syllable like molasses on a summer afternoon. Korzak chuckled, though it sounded like a dying turbine. "Your humor is quaint. Please, let us dine before formal proceedings." They were led into a room of impossible opulence. The table was a single slice of petrified nebula root, imported from a dead star. Alien delicacies glittered, vinegar crystals from Growlithe Prime, fermented moonfish bladder, and something that looked like it might still be thinking. Darnell, wide-eyed, poked a gelatinous purple mound. It gurgled. He gurgled back, shrugged, and unwrapped a terrestrial granola bar from his jacket pocket. "All due respect, I'll stick to what don't twitch." Senator Toei, a feathery creature with golden eyes and the posture of a nervous crow, tilted her head. "We are eager to learn of your war doctrines. Historical accounts suggest Earth practices excessive violence for minimal gain." Kane looked up from a piece of bread he'd dissected with military precision. "That depends how you measure gain." Margaret dabbed the corners of her mouth with a silk napkin. "We don't like to talk about the past. It's full of all kinds of uncomfortable things. Like how y'all stole 3 mining colonies before saying oops. But we forgive easy, don't we, Private?" Darnell spoke through a mouthful of oats. "Ma'am says Forgivian is cheaper than Retaliatin. Course, that was before the bombing last week." Korzak waved a massive hand. "A misunderstanding. Your colony did not identify itself clearly. Our scanners." Margaret's hand fluttered to her chest like a debutante fainting at bad news. "Oh, honey. Now, I'm just a simple woman from Georgia, but when a place has a neon sign saying Earth Outpost, do not bomb, I do believe it's clear enough." The table fell quiet. Senator Toei shifted in her seat. "Surely, retaliation is not on the table. This is a diplomatic summit." Kane reached into his coat and pulled out a small, outdated Earth recording device. A dusty cassette player. He clicked it. A man's voice crackled through the static. "If this message plays, that means we were right." He clicked it off. Margaret lifted her teacup. "Y'all ever had Darjeeling? Comes from high up in the Himalayas. Has to grow just right. Takes patience. Care." She stared directly into Korzak's central eye. "It's funny what thrives under pressure." The Admiral blinked, unsettlingly aware he was being measured. Darnell whistled low. "Ma'am, they don't know, do they?" Margaret didn't answer. She poured more tea. The room tried to shift the tone. A Jarti dignitary, an amphibious noble with glittering skin, offered a toast to peace between species. It was met with polite smiles. But Margaret's eyes never left Korzak. Kane didn't touch his drink. Toei cleared her throat. "May I inquire why your personnel records are sealed? All three of you. Reinstated from decommission service? Earth lists you as, how is it phrased, non-standard assets." Kane's smile was dry as dust. "We're recyclables. Earth believes in second chances." Margaret added, "Some folks knit in retirement. We just happen to be better at tactical mischief." Darnell beamed. "You should have seen what she did to the last guy that tried to invade Kentucky. Whole army hallucinated their own funerals. Called it ghost warfare. Real spooky stuff." Toei's feathers rippled. Korzak frowned. "Earth's tactics are unrefined. You fight like wild animals. No elegance. No honor." Margaret leaned forward. Her voice dipped in honey. "Animals? Oh, Admiral, bless your heart." He stiffened. She went on, voice calm as ever. "See, that's where we differ. You think war's a dance, a show, something that follows rules. But we learned early that war ain't polite. It's efficient, dirty, personal. And we don't dance, Admiral. We hunt." Darnell added helpfully. "And when we're real good at it, we smile while doing it." The silence afterward could have stopped time. Kane looked at his watch, almost casually. 27 minutes. Toei's feathers bristled. "Until what?" "Nothing to worry about," Margaret cooed. "Just waiting on the dessert. Oh, and for your outer fleet to finish uploading our little gift." Korzak roared. "What gift?" She pulled out a small, engraved box and set it on the table. "We call it a handshake. It's old Earth tech. Primitive. Bypasses advanced systems because, well, y'all don't expect the obvious." Kane pressed a button. All lights flickered. Across the ship, systems glitched. Doors locked. Cameras looped. In the docking bay, alien guards began coughing violently. Every console displaying fleet data showed the same flickering word. Processing. Korzak stood. "What have you done?" Darnell sighed. "Tried the friendly route. Now we're doing things the Earth way." Margaret rose, graceful as snowfall. "Y'all wanted to meet Earth's finest generals. Well, here we are." Kane pulled a small blade from his coat. Darnell unscrewed the bottom of his thermos, revealing a blinking detonator core. Toei, trembling, whispered, "This was never a negotiation." "No, sugar," Margaret said, her eyes soft and merciless. "This was bait. And you? You swallowed." In the corner of the room, a single security drone sparked and collapsed. Margaret stepped over to the Admiral, her voice a lullaby. "Tell your empire, we've already been to hell. We carved roads through it, and we left the signs behind, in case anyone else wanted to follow." The lights went red. The flagship groaned. Margaret turned to Toei, her voice a gentle promise. "You still got time to leave. Warren M. Might save lives. Not many, but some." Toei staggered to her feet, wings shaking. "Why are you doing this?" Margaret smiled. "Because peace," she said, "is just what you call war once it's won." The lights on the writ of order had turned a deep, pulsing crimson, an emergency protocol designed for hull breaches or planetary collisions, not for three humans sitting quietly at a dinner table. But the lights didn't care about intent. They only responded to threat. And right now, threat wore pearls. Admiral Korzak slammed one massive fist into the table, shattering crystalware. "What have you done to my ship?" Margaret Vale didn't flinch. Her teacup didn't tremble. "You'll want to sit, Admiral. Getting agitated raises your throat pressure. I'd hate for you to rupture something before dessert." Kane remained seated, eyes tracking the ceiling where a camera now spun in helpless loops. His voice was cool, clinical. "Tertiary AI functions disabled. Fleet level override in process. Our virus is performing as expected." Senator Toei was already halfway out of her seat, feathers fluffed in alarm. This is a diplomatic violation. This is treason. Technically, Margaret said, brushing a shard of glass off her lap, y'all started the treason when you firebombed our outpost. Her tone was as mild as a weather report. We're just finishing it with a little style. Korzak's voice deepened. We are the Galactic Empire. We do not answer to upstart carnivores wrapped in silk. Kane stood, slowly, and the room shifted. Something about his posture changed, not physically, but atmospherically. He no longer looked like a scholar. He looked like the calm at the heart of a massacre. We didn't ask you to answer, he said. We asked you to listen. Once. Toei's long, talon-like fingers tapped furiously at her communicator. Static answered. She tried again. Nothing. Her crest shivered. You've jammed us. Only local comms, Kane confirmed. Your distress beacons will work. For now. It won't matter. Margaret crossed the room to Korzak. He towered over her, bristling with power and pride. But he took a step back. Just one. Enough. Tell me, Admiral, she said. Do you know what a scour theory is? His answer was a growl. Some archaic Earth strategy. She chuckled softly. Now that's adorable. We used to call it the garden shears method, because you don't just cut weeds, darling. You cut the soil around them. You salt the ground. You make sure nothing grows there again. Darnell strolled in from the side corridor, dusting powder from his sleeves. Cargo bays locked. They got guards posted, but not breathing. Forgot about vapor absorption. Bless M. He took out a pack of gum, offered it to Toei. She recoiled. No. Suit yourself. It's peppermint. Helps me focus. Margaret glanced at Kane. Status. Fleet ships still running mainframe encryption. We need another 7 minutes before Phase 2. Outer cannons have already rotated. Toei gasped. You've taken control of the fleet. Darnell grinned. Just parts. Enough to make M nervous. Maybe pull a trigger they shouldn't. That's what happens when you hardwire ego into your battleships. Korzak lunged. Margaret stepped aside like wind around a stone. Kane caught the Admiral mid-charge, drove a metal pen, actually a thin blade, into the alien's shoulder, then twisted. Korzak bellowed, collapsed to one knee. No, Kane said evenly, you sit. Toei backed into the corner, panting. You're not generals. You're not soldiers. You're criminals. That's true, Margaret said. Technically. Once upon a time. She turned to face her, the kindness draining from her eyes like light from a dead star. You know what Earth did with our serial tacticians? The ones too smart to jail, too dangerous to kill? We froze M. Cried M like peas. Just in case the universe ever gave us a reason to thaw 'em out. Kane wiped the blade clean with his sleeve. Then you gave us one. Toei stared. You're murderers. No sugar, Margaret said. Murder's messy. We do precision subtraction, tactical removal, ethical pruning when necessary. Darnell leaned in. I just blow stuff up. Korzak groaned on the floor, bleeding silvery fluid. You've doomed yourselves. This will spark a galactic war. It already has, Kane replied. Your side just hadn't read the memo. Outside the ship, unseen by most, the outer wings of the fleet had begun to drift slightly apart, unusual, since they were supposed to remain in formation at all times. But the ships were responding to false commands now, recalibrating, adjusting firing arcs, preparing for something they couldn't yet understand. Y'all treated us like pets, Margaret said softly. Little Earth, full of emotions and dirt. But we were watching, listening, and preparing. Toei's voice cracked. For what? Kane answered. For the day someone called us weak and believed it. Darnell sighed happily. We built a whole religion on underestimated rage. Ever heard of the Alamo? Toei shook her head. That's fine, Darnell said. You'll understand it in about 10 minutes. Margaret moved to a nearby console, tapped a sequence. With such practiced ease, it was clear she'd memorized the ship's interface days ago. The screen flashed. Fleet control override. 83% complete. Now, Admiral, she said, I believe you were about to call us primitive again. Korzak coughed. You'll never hold the Empire. Our fleets are endless. Kane met his gaze, cold and flat. We don't intend to hold it. We intend to break it. Like a bone that healed wrong. Darnell held up a small metal cube. This here's a flavor enhancer. You sprinkle it on dry rations, and boom, meat tastes like meat. But this one's special. In a few seconds, it's going to transmit a null wave pulse. Toei's eyes widened. A null wave. Shuts down neurosynthetic drives. Disables smart targeting. And in dumb systems like yours, triggers a failsafe that auto-locks every cannon onto the last recorded heat signature. Toei's voice trembled. Witches? Margaret smiled. The capital moon. The moment was almost religious in its stillness. Korzak's breathing grew ragged. You're monsters. She bent close, whispering into one of his ears. No, darling. You just taught us to be. She tapped Darnell's cube. It beeped. Kane began counting down. 3 minutes to detonation. Toei slumped against the wall. Why? Why provoke annihilation? Margaret didn't gloat. Didn't rage. She just looked tired. Because y'all don't learn from warnings. You learn from wreckage. Silence. Then softly Toei said, I want to leave. I want to report this. Darnell tossed her a small chip. Recording. Preloaded. Every word. Every move. Go ahead. Fleet. Kane looked at her. Tell the galaxy. Tell them what happens when you poke Earth with a stick. Margaret stepped back into the light, voice rising just enough to fill the space. You can crush our borders, sabotage our colonies, butcher our people. But if you think for 1 second that Earth forgot how to respond, you're mistaken. The console flashed. Fleet control override. 100% complete. Darnell tapped a button on his forearm. A distant boom echoed through the ship. The stars blinked, and one of the Empire's proudest destroyers turned its cannons inward and fired. It vanished in a blaze of its own making. Margaret turned to Toei, soft as a lullaby. We didn't want war, but we're real good at it. Toei fled. Margaret looked around the room, took in the scent of melted circuits and scorched pride. Y'all wanted to test the monsters we locked away. Well, here we are. Kane nodded. Initiate Phase 3. Darnell finished his gum and swallowed it. Yeehaw. The first kill was quiet. A Larthack technician slumped against the bulkhead with a look of puzzled betrayal etched into his throat sac, eyes flickering in disbelief. He'd been trying to manually override a fleet broadcast node when General Kane stepped behind him and inserted a ceramic blade between vertebrae. No sound. No drama. Just silence, cold and practiced. Kane wiped the blade on the back of his sleeve and stepped over the body like it was floor debris. Around him, the ship hissed with confusion. Intercoms sputtered binary static. Security feeds displayed looped footage of empty corridors. Weapons systems flickered, loading phantom targets. The writ of order was no longer a ship. It was a trap with engines. Darnell knelt beside a junction box, muttering to himself. Y'all ever wonder why aliens love centralized control systems? One virus, boom. Whole ship's a toaster. He twisted a screwdriver between his fingers, unspooled a wire, and grinned at the crackle of energy that danced across his knuckles. Behind him, the corridor lights went out. Perfect, he whispered. Just how I like my diplomacy, dimly lit and full of booby traps. Margaret Vale moved through the chaos like a ghost with good posture. She'd shed her jacket, revealing a holster and an old patch sewn inside the lining. Black Orchid Division, by silence, we thrive. Her footsteps were unhurried. She passed trembling officers, never looked down, never changed her expression. When one guard raised a plasma lance, she offered him a smile like Sunday morning. He hesitated. That was enough. Her silenced pistol whispered once, and he crumpled. Pity, she murmured, stepping over the body. Looked like he believed in something. Further down, emergency teams scrambled through halls, attempting to regain control of ship systems. But the virus hadn't just disabled communications. It had rearranged them. Alarms routed to the wrong decks. Commands echoed in reverse. At least 3 corridors had been reprogrammed to loop spatially. Running down one sent you back to the start like some kind of cruel prank. And then the power core began humming. Loudly. On the bridge, Admiral Korzak bled into a ceremonial shawl, struggling to regain his command chair. Two of his remaining officers argued, one shouting for reinforcements, the other insisting the humans must have smuggled a dreadnought on board. The Admiral knew better. There was no dreadnought. There were just 3 humans, and every second they remained loose made the word just feel more insulting. They're scattered, the officer insisted. Isolated. Disorganized. Korzak's response was a bitter cough. No, they're hunting. In a hidden maintenance shaft, Margaret paused at a grated wall and observed 2 alien engineers working desperately to reroute life support. She studied their posture, read their body language. Fear, confusion, urgency. But no coordination. She closed her eyes, ran the probabilities, and exhaled slowly. 1 shot. 2nd shot. Both fell. Kane joined her moments later, silent as snowfall. 18 down, he said. Shipboard count. Roughly 600 still active. Spread too thin. Command paralyzed. Fleet. 2 ships already eliminated themselves. 4 locked in targeting loops. Capital Moon has yet to respond. Margaret checked her watch. 17 minutes until planetary alarm. Kane nodded. Enough. Darnell's voice crackled through a hacked comm line. I just made a hallway smell like fried socks and formaldehyde. Pretty sure the amphibians are having an existential crisis. Margaret smiled faintly. Remind them Earth never really banned chemical warfare. We just got subtle. Copy that, ma'am. Somewhere on Deck 7, Toei ran through smoke and flickering lights. She had blood on her wing feathers, not hers, and clutched a stolen sidearm with trembling fingers. The humans had offered her freedom. She'd taken it. But she hadn't escaped. Not really. The ship itself was against her. And the worst part was knowing they'd planned it this way. A vent hissed. She turned, fired blindly. Nothing. Just air. A whisper. Running won't save them, a voice said. Her voice. Played back through a splice speaker. She dropped the gun and ran. Kane watched from a security panel. The analyst cracked. She'll be useful, Margaret said. A frightened truth-teller gets more airtime than a diplomat. Agreed. Down below, Darnell triggered another looped protocol. The galley sealed. Airlocks, inverted gravity. Deck lights strobed a pattern that mimicked an ancient Earth Morse code. SOS. It was a joke. But it also triggered a forgotten peacekeeping failsafe in the ship's old programming. 5 bulkheads unlocked. The hallway ahead of him filled with gas. Darnell pulled on a cheap rebreather and skipped into the mist. Just like prom night, he said, swinging a wrench. On the bridge, Korzak watched as red markers blinked out across the ship map. His tactical aide, young green-skinned and far too hopeful, reached for the override again. Korzak slapped his hand away. They want us to trigger the lockdown, he growled. It'll just give them more control. The aide stared. But how? They're humans. They shouldn't be capable of this. Their history is written in blood. Korzak slammed his fist into the console, and we handed them a pen. Toei stumbled into the lower archive chamber. Here, the lights still functioned. Ancient war records, capture treaties, and experimental weapons logs lined the walls. She gasped, leaned on a terminal, and replayed internal footage. She saw Kane moving like a shadow. Margaret whispering as she shot. Darnell rigging old-fashioned explosives from kitchen items. She saw herself, running, trembling, braking. She saw what they'd let her become. A warning. She opened a transmission channel and screamed into it. They're not soldiers. They're calibrated, bred in silence. The Empire was never ready for what we brought on board. Outside the ship, 5 cruisers turned in confusion, their captains reading conflicting orders. Their mainframes said to fire. Their instincts said to wait. Their hesitation cost them time. Time was the last thing they had. Inside the core shaft, Margaret stared at the pulsing column of energy. Initiate countdown, she said softly. Kane keyed in a sequence. 12 minutes. Darnell's voice came through again. Got a new problem. One of the escape pods just ejected. Who? Birdie. Margaret tilted her head. Good. She'll deliver the sermon. Toei's pod zipped into the dark like a silver seed flung by a panic tree. Inside, she hyperventilated, clutching the data drive, replaying their words over and over. Not for fear anymore. For clarity. Because the humans hadn't just destroyed a ship. They declared war with a smile. In the command center, Margaret turned to Kane. Final report, 72% confirmed neutralized. Remaining factions are retreating into unsecured zones. 2 more ships may attempt docking. She adjusted her gloves. Then let's greet them. The final act began. Emergency bay doors opened as if malfunctioning. 2 platoons of armored aliens stormed aboard, shouting orders, scanning wildly. They saw a hallway, flickering lights, shadows, then laughter. Darnell stepped out, holding a stick of gum. "Hey fellas, y'all ever hear about the Battle of Starlight Ridge?" They raised weapons. He dropped the gum, and the hallway exploded. Fire rolled across steel. Screams vanished into heat. Kane moved through the smoke seconds later, double-tapping anything that twitched. He didn't look angry. He didn't look pleased. He just looked done. Margaret followed. As they stepped into the now silent bay, she looked out the viewport. The capital moon shone peacefully in the distance. "That one's next," she said. "Message?" Kane asked. She reached into her jacket, retrieved the locket, and opened it. Inside was a picture, an old woman in a floral apron, standing on a porch, smiling. "My grandmother made biscuits every Sunday," she said. Said the secret was soft hands and hard resolve. She closed the locket, broadcast that. Outside, ships blinked and stuttered, confused by Earth's sudden, savage clarity. And, in her pod, spinning through the void, Toei whispered through tears, they weren't diplomats. They were predators in pearls. The shattered remains of the writ of order drifted in orbit, leaking fire and silence into the stars. Its once pristine hull was a scar across the sky, etched by fire and soaked in the weight of underestimation. Debris spiraled through the void in graceful arcs, shards of command terminals, fragments of alien banners, melted silver that used to be protocol. In the middle of it all stood General Margaret Vale, untouched and impeccable. She stood at the helm of what used to be a galactic prize, her silhouette backlit by the smoldering remnants of a flagship that believed diplomacy was a shield. Her voice, steady as polished steel, carried through the bridge now manned by her own. Not by appointment, but by proof. "Begin the transmission." Private Darnell leaned back in the command chair, sipping something bright green from a crystal flask. "Should I include background music? You know, subtle psychological intimidation." Margaret didn't smile. "Let them listen in silence. It lands heavier." Across the quadrant, across alien frequencies and frightened screens, the human face appeared. Her face. Impossibly calm, a portrait of grace. And then she began to speak. To the remaining vessels of the Galactic Empire, and any who would follow their example. This is not a surrender. This is a correction. She adjusted her gloves. Behind her, on the cracked view screen, flickered footage. The internal collapse of the writ, alien soldiers dropping weapons, running from a war they thought was metaphorical. You sent ambassadors to our colonies with treaties dipped in poison. You targeted a civilian outpost under the guise of a navigational error. You justified it in council records by citing Earth's emotional unpredictability. We read those minutes. Thank you kindly. Darnell leaned toward the mic, stage whispering. Y'all done goofed. Margaret went on. We don't expect apologies. That's a luxury for survivors. What we do expect are new terms and clarity. In the shadow of the moon, Earth's emergency fleet, the ones never cataloged, never publicized, running on tech the galaxy thought abandoned, unfolded their wings. 20 ships, quiet, black as regret, not a word, just presence. Korzak, barely conscious and strapped to a shattered command chair, looked up at the feed. What are you? Peace terms, Margaret said, walking past him. You've had millennia of practice making others kneel. Now you'll learn to listen instead. Kane stood at the opposite end of the bridge, reprogramming long-range comms. He glanced at her, that ever-patient mask still in place. Toei's pod reached a trade station. Broadcast has been duplicated in 7 systems already. Another for our echoing it on loops. Margaret nodded once. Good. It'll spread faster than fear. Darnell twirled a stolen alien sidearm on his finger. You want me to go ahead and vaporize their orbital HQ? Just a little exclamation point, you know. She considered. No. They need something to surrender from. There was a beat of silence. Then she continued the transmission. Humanity is not requesting anything. We are informing you. The following systems are now under quarantine. Any approach without Earth-cleared tags will be treated as hostile. You will not be warned. You will not be negotiated with. Darnell whispered. We skipped straight to the part where we are the law. Margaret went on. Any further hostilities will be met not with retaliation, but adjustment. Structural, political, biological if necessary. We are not angry. We are not vengeful. We are simply awake now. Kane watched the signal travel. Galactic leaders were scrambling, their response logs pinging faster than a thunderstorm. They hadn't expected Earth to be capable of this. They'd certainly never expected Earth to win. And yet here they were. On every screen, on every ship, in every chamber where arrogance once reigned, Margaret Vale's eyes were watching. We suggest moving forward. You forget the image of humanity as a collection of fractured species with sentimental eyes and soft boundaries. Those were our masks. We've taken them off. In the capital system, senators fell into debates, their voices shaking. Some screamed for retaliation. Others, wiser, remembered how fast Earth had moved, how little had been required, how surgical it all was. One senator, an ancient creature of bark and bone, whispered to her aides, "This is not war. This is extinction with manners." Margaret concluded, "These are our peace terms. You'll find them merciful." She stepped away from the camera. Kane ended the transmission. For a few long moments, the bridge was silent. Then the secondary feed pinged, responses pouring in like tidewater. 84 systems requesting clarification, Kane reported. 42 proposing ceasefire, Darnell added. 3 said long live Earth. 1 sent muffins. Margaret raised an eyebrow. "The air surprisingly moist," Darnell said. She ignored it. Korzak, still bleeding, coughed. You destroyed everything." "For what?" "Respect." Margaret crouched beside him. "No, Admiral. We destroyed everything because you forgot what we are." He looked at her with what was left of his dignity. "You're murderers." "We're survivors," she said quietly, "with long memories and sharper tools than you thought." He spat silver blood onto the floor. "You've made enemies that will never sleep." Kane spoke from behind them. "That's fine. We stopped sleeping centuries ago." Darnell leaned on a console. "Whole galaxy thought we were unpredictable emotional bipeds with primitive impulses. Funny thing is, they were right. Just forgot the part where we weaponize our instincts." Margaret stood, eyes distant. "We came here to offer diplomacy. You offered annihilation. So we taught you what Earth diplomacy looks like after dark." More pings. One from the capital moon itself. Kane read aloud. "Council requests audience with Earth's representative. Immediate parley. Full compliance. Zero resistance." Darnell grinned. "They want to talk?" Margaret turned to Kane. "Prepare a reply." He nodded. "What do you want to say?" Kane asked. She paused. "Tell them Earth accepts. With conditions." "And those are?" She looked out the viewport, where stars bent around silent warships. "No more lies. No more puppets. We don't want their flags or their currency. We want their fear. We want their respect made permanent. Let them look at the night sky and wonder if we're watching." She folded her hands behind her back. "Because we are." Kane sent the message. It would echo for centuries. Behind her, Darnell slowly clapped. "Hot damn. That's how you close a show." She allowed herself a half smile. This wasn't the show, Private. "Ma'am." This was the trailer. Far off, a relay satellite exploded, its safety trigger corrupted. The galaxy flinched. On the surface of the capital moon, an aide turned to his superior and whispered, "Why didn't we see this coming?" The reply was a single line: because they were smiling. As the humans prepared for departure, the bridge door opened and a young comms officer entered, trembling. "General, we've just received another transmission from Earth Command. They say," he swallowed, "they say well done. And that Phase 2 may proceed at your discretion." Margaret glanced at Kane. "Phase 2?" Darnell asked, suddenly alert. "I thought this was Phase 2. Kane didn't blink. "No, Private. This was Phase 1, Part B." Darnell slowly sat down. "I don't want to know what C looks like." Margaret returned to the center of the bridge. "Upload our findings. Send the data home. Begin evacuation of our auxiliary team. And inform Earth Command that the galaxy has accepted our peace terms." She looked down at the remains of the Admiral, then at the distant moon. Time to come home. As the ship began to hum, reassembling its path between stars, Margaret allowed herself a final look at the void. She saw the future, not in conquest, but in control. A galaxy that would think twice. 1,000 species that would remember the humans who smiled and said please before burning everything down. Kane stood beside her, quiet and steady. "You think they'll stay afraid?" "No," she said. "They'll evolve, just like we did, but they'll never forget." Behind them, Darnell cracked open a ration bar and leaned against the command console. "You'll realize I never even fired my sidearm?" Margaret didn't turn. "You didn't need to," she said. "That's what scares me," he muttered. The ship turned. Engines flared. The stars bent. And Earth's monsters, tacticians in tailored coats, predators with patient eyes, vanished into the dark, leaving only silence and a lesson behind. A lesson every world would teach their children. Don't poke Earth, especially when it's smiling.